Welcome, everyone, to the HeroX Innovation Leadership Speaker Series. I'm Jamie Elliott. I'm joined today by Buka Onwuzurike. Really great to have you here, Buka. Thanks so much for joining. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for having me on. I'm Buka. I'm based out of Detroit, Michigan, but I've lived all over the U.S. and a little bit the world. I used to be a consultant for McKinsey, where I lived in New York, Boston, lived in London for a little bit. Have a data science background, finance and strategy, kind of is that little wheelhouse in between finance and strategy and technology and data science. I've done all types of stuff. I've also, in a very, very past life, was a product line designer for Converse for a little bit. But for the most part, my most recent experience is around tech data. Before coming back home, my family has a general contracting construction business. So I've come back, brought the best intelligence and expertise from, I guess, around the world to back home to help out the family and really take this to the next level.
That is quite the background in terms of professional diversity. Before we dive into the company, what of those areas are like right now are you, or in these past months, have you been applying the most, from product to data science to finance and all those things you mentioned?
I would say kind of getting down to the simplicity of it. I think oftentimes every industry kind of has their own like one language, but also just how they do things. But oftentimes simplifying things helps a lot, especially kind of coming new to the construction industry. Often for myself to understand what's going on, I'll have to kind of bring it down to thinking, let's say, about construction as baking a cake. There's ingredients, aka raw materials, there's steps, and things that need to be done in a particular order for a particular duration. And then there's this end result that we're kind of shooting for. So that's always been kind of a thing that I've noticed in design, in finance, and construction, and strategy. I think it's one of the habits from like highly successful people, like beginning with the end in mind. That is a really big key thing to help simplify things and figure out, the basics.
Nice. Yeah, and I know from a project management perspective, the way, for example, we do challenge competitions at HeroX when we design them, right? We have this challenge goal in mind, and then the project management term for it is decomposition and breaking things down into their smaller components and working backwards from there so that you can kind of see your path to achieving that goal. So tell me about the company, and the big question of this speaker series is, how do you innovate differently?
Yeah. So my company, my family's business has been around for 31 years, getting close to 32 in a few months. We've been doing general contracting, started off doing kind of smaller jobs. And over time, as you gain more experience, you can do bigger jobs. We've done some joint ventures with some pretty large, big names to the construction world, Turner, Gilban, things of that sort. And then over time, the team's built out, and we have also expanded outside of Detroit to the whole Midwest region. So we have a branch office in Illinois, Indianapolis, and Kansas City. And then we also have primarily do a lot of public sector work. We're in a few different government agencies, the GSA, which is the General Service Admissions, and the FAA. So that kind of sends us around the country, but we also like to stay close to home. My dad's done a great job. It's funny enough, every time we're in these, I've been in the interview process when we do hire new people, and he always talks about how KEO is an innovative company, and that's part of our slogan for years. I think it's bridging thought and reality with innovative, constructive solutions. Funny enough, innovation has been at the thought since very, very way back. My dad's always wanted to use kind of some of the newest tools, like Procore is one of the industry standard construction management tools. So he adopted that quite early on and has really wants to stayed with it. However, I think kind of where I come in is knowing about the tech stack and how Procore can integrate with other tools, as well as how do we maximize how to use Procore. Because as you know, from any tool, whether it's a hardware, software, or just physical tool, there's some power users who really know how to use it and people who kind of just know how to pick it up and put it down.
Very cool. It's interesting. You mentioned your data science background. Are you applying that in any ways to the work and like analytic work into the projects and things that you have going on now?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the most part, we've the biggest thing I think if any data scientist knows is getting good data. When I was in McKinsey, we'd join a project and they would think we'd be able to start day one, but The first
Yeah.
prep is just getting all the data in the right spot, making sure it's clean enough, just so there isn't this waste of time of bringing the whole team when the data is not even ready to do analytics and get insights. So right now, the first few months have actually been just one, seeing where everything is, seeing how things are processed, how information flows, both from like physical paper to actually getting in the digital Excel or Word format, and then maybe back to where it needs to go. Things. The main big shift that I was able to do recently was we were using this just localized in on-prem server. We just called the G drive, F drive. So this one was the G drive that was connected to everyone, and it was pretty messy. People dumped folders, dumped things in the wrong spot. I think sometimes connection wasn't as great. So by chance or by choice, it was a pretty messy place. So one was kind of organizing it, and I decided just to skip that and just to start something new because we wanted to bring it to the cloud. We are using the Microsoft 365 suite. So hey, we're going to use SharePoint. Everyone already had a OneDrive. We already had access, but we weren't really quite using it. So that was the first thing of just, hey, centralizing to a place, creating a nice folder structure, so everything's easy to find, and then we can kind of build from there. So, right now, I've just been using this my data science background to one, create a good foundation, but also a foundation that's scalable. Because many times, if you'll kind of build things and realize, oh, I gotta reconfigure the structure so it kind of fits this use case or kind of these things. So that's where the data science background comes in, just knowing the importance of data, centralizing
Nice.
things, and also having a good foundation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. They often say, right, in data science that 80 to 90% of your work is going to be cleaning,
Yeah.
data manipulation to get it ready to start building models on top of. We actually HeroX got to do a data science challenge competition for the FAA. You mentioned the FAA.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was cool. It was this past year. It was a university challenge. It was their second iteration of running it. They looked at they basically gave free rein to the students. They said,
Oh
here
wow.
are the FAA's strategic goals. See what you can come up with in terms of a data science project. And it was modeled, the challenge was modeled so that it fit with their semester work. So teams would team up with a faculty advisor who helped
Hmm.
them through it. I think the winning team was University of Oregon, and they used speech recognition technologies to identify stress in air traffic control, which very appropriate and timely, and yeah, just remarkable work
Wow.
to see come out of it. Yeah, it was pretty cool to watch.
That's very, very
Um,
cool.
so in terms of impact, you had mentioned the first time we talked about you're working in a family business, medium sized, it sounds like. What do you see as the way that you all are innovating now, bringing a competitive edge and impact to the work that you do in the industry that you're in?
Yeah. So I think the competitive edge where we have is I think with the tools now, there's an ability for mid-size or small-size companies to actually stay small or mid-size, but then be able to kind of, I would say, bang with the big guys.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where we come in, and I think the big thing is really getting everyone up to speed. So I think it says you're as fast as your slowest leg, or as strong as your weakest link. So I think it's kind
Mm.
of meeting where we're at. A lot of the tools I have a good vision on where we want to go, but ultimately right now I think my big philosophy is a little bit on patience, but mainly around meeting people where they're at to get where you need to go. But physically and metaphorically, I think that's a good motto to live by. For example, one time I was in New York, separate to this, a friend was trying to come over to my spot and like didn't really know where we were, but we're on the phone talking to him. I'm like, hey, like turn left, and he was just not turning the right direction. So I said, hey, stay right there. I'll be there
Yeah.
in 7 minutes exactly. And then I went, found him, grabbed him, and then took him to my spots. In order to get him obviously to where we need to go, I had to meet him where he was at. So I think that I take that philosophy too, as well in terms of the tech stuff. People who have some pretty advanced skills in terms of their tools. There's tools like Bluebeam and some like PDF and construction, more centric tools. And then there's some kind of industry standard corporate tools, Word, Excel, Microsoft. So getting everyone up to speed right there. And then also getting us to utilizing some of the more industry standard tools like Procore and a few others. And then ultimately, AI is the big topic, and now getting everyone up to speed there. But I think one, we just got to get people comfortable using some of these tools, collaborating in this way. So one of the main tools that we built was this production tracker. And this was just, again, centralized data, have us talk about our projects and the key metrics and KPIs. The easiest way I could describe our production tracker is it's just a dashboard with KPIs that's on a cloud-based Excel. And it sounds simple, but it has a lot of powerful benefits. One, because it's quite approachable. There's many more advanced solutions, but I kind of wanted something that can be managed by someone not too tech savvy. They create a new sheet, copy paste, add new things, fill it out, but also can be inputted in and manipulated and interacted with. So it's not just me kind of doing things or a few people in the company, that everyone here, if you know how to use an Excel, you can use this thing. If you know how to go on a website, you can use this thing. It's also accessible on your phone. So that's some of the
Nice.
stuff that we're kind of doing.
Nice. Yeah, I wanted to say when we talked about the data and cleaning the data, the other thing to do, right, is at a certain point in time, put the right sensors in place. They'll say, right, if it's a machine reading kind of thing, it's like, okay, now we're going to set ourselves up so that the data we collect from here on out will be as clean as it possibly can be. And it sounds like that foundational work that you're doing is kind of laying that foundation so that going forward, a production tracker, for example, you may be able to track some efficiencies or look for efficiency gains or look for where you may be doing things inconsistently and could get more consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of one, it's good to uh, both big teams and small teams is making sure that we're all focused on the right numbers and we're also talking about the same numbers. So when I say that, like, this
Right.
is our RFIs, we have 14 versus 17, or, all these different things. So that's a big thing.
Yeah.
So we're all talking about the same thing. And then again, also, like I was saying, like to answer your question, how some of the smaller mid-sized companies where we leverage innovation is just kind of being more fast. I think one thing we have, like many startups, being lean, you have that ability to shift directions quickly. You have the ability to walk over to the accounting department or say, hey, we're going to have a full accounting, HR, whoever meeting. And that's 3, 4 people versus if it was a big
Right.
organization, it's syncing calendars, someone's on vacation, and then 2, 3 weeks later, then you have that one meeting. Well, we would have had 3 or 4 within that same time frame. Yeah.
Yeah, we see that in challenges a lot, especially like multi-phase challenges where teams are working, they have a certain goal and everybody everybody has a plan, right? And when they start out in
Mhm.
a certain phase, you've got 6 to 12 months to do your tasks and complete your goals or achieve your goals. But things happen. And that's kind of the whole purpose of innovation and the way we run these competitions, for example, is allowing for that pivot to happen, allowing for failure if there needs to be. It's a part of the process of just assessing as you go, iterating as you go, and readjusting your course to achieve what you set out to achieve. Very cool. You mentioned that you have a vision. Are there things about your vision that you can share
Yeah.
with us?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think ultimately coming from like, let's say, this big enterprise global company and then coming back down to just like more on the local Midwest level. I think for me it's like, hey, like I felt like I was in McKinsey and in other big organizations as we did work with other places. So I saw, hey, look, this is what the big guys do. And I think many times, whether you're thinking on the athletic level or on the corporate level, I think some of the amateurs or maybe not as big players don't actually know all the new steps and things that they need to do to kind of enter at this level of the game. Also, I used to be a runner. Sometimes, if I have any sports references, I ran track at Boston
Very cool.
University.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, so I think there's a certain level that is needed to kind of, I guess, table stakes at the big leagues. So, for example, I think one is just when I was all the big enterprise that I was saying, there's a ton of templates. So there's also this kind of, if I'd have to break it down to kind of take a step back and be a little bit more organized, I think there's a bunch of tools and resources and support, both in terms of people, but also in technologies that help people focus on what they need to do. So they're not needing to worry about setting up their email signature. That's already kind of there, already integrated. They don't really need to they kind of can jump into a new company, have some kind of industry knowledge, but then have a certain level of steps of this is our recipe, how we build buildings. Just like every restaurant has their own way that they're going to cook their Alfredo pasta, this is how we cook ours. So you kind of come in and there's having those integrations there. The main thing I was kind of in terms of the vision is I think there's technology that helps the operations, and then the operations helps the people, and the people ultimately help the strategy. So strategically, I think I kind of want to still stay small. I think I want to, again, partner with some big organizations here and there, but I think there's an ability where if we pick a few industries and sectors, whether it's healthcare, education, and get that done well, I think there's a lot of power there because then you can actually get the learning effects from having done the same thing over and over again. Second, also, I think one thing I've seen about some of the best companies and also some of the best leaders, I think I forgot who said it, but someone said that leadership oftentimes is getting the best and smartest people that you can and then just getting out the way. So I think there is an
Yeah.
element of, hey, let me bring the best people, let me give them the best support, and also let me also reward them properly. And that's also kind of what I was thinking where as a small organization, you have the big guys, they have the brand name, but as a small guy, you have the ability to have better incentives where, hey, look, we're doing the same amount of work. We have slightly less big pie, but everyone can get a bigger piece of the pie. So you have that in terms of the compensation incentives or healthcare insurance, which is always great. But then you also have a little bit more control of the culture. I remember in McKinsey, there is obviously the MBB, and I think Bain was typically smaller than BCG and McKinsey. However, they're also known to have a much more intricate culture. And I think being
Mhm.
that kind of out of the three big guys, being a little bit smaller, they kind of have that ability to do that. So I think also in a small place, kind of speaking of the culture, is that in an organization, I think there's my philosophy around business is that it can be a place where people want to be. Um, Obviously, you can compensate them accordingly, but there's things that you can get in your corporate career that you just can't get. I think many times you can easily get respect in the office
Mhm.
that you may not get respect at your home, either from your spouse or from your children or from whoever your parents. You have a sense of direction of, hey, look, I know exactly what I need to do versus, on a team in the rec center at home, like things are a little chaotic. There's a sense where, hey, I can kind of, especially when I used to run, you go to practice, turn your brain off and just do what you need to do. Same element can be done in the office where people kind of come. It's a place of peace, a place of expectations. So I think there is a element where you can build a nice culture where people want to come here. You're now collaborating. You're now doing something bigger than you would have thought of. You're interacting. People meet their friends, their spouses. So I'm thinking that even though we're small, I think there's an ability to really create a good culture. So I think people is also at the focus of it. And then in terms of operation and technology, I think nowadays, just as you're saying, some more solo entrepreneurs or 2, 3 men startups, I think there's an ability for companies to, again, get the same uh, or produce more value without having to have as many bodies. And with that being said, that allows for people to be more niche. Again, kind of going with the strategy. So it's all tied together.
Nice. I love the vision. What it sounds like as a leader, you're also giving, like you said, you've got these experts. You've surrounded yourself with these experts, these people that have been doing this their whole career. They know the recipe, and you're giving in your culture. You're giving them that voice. You're giving them that platform where their opinion, their professional opinion, their vision can be heard because it doesn't have to necessarily be one person says this is how it goes. You're out there
Hmm.
working as a team and creating that culture. Creating that culture can sometimes be difficult, but it sounds like you're doing a great job. The quote you mentioned, I had a supervisor. This was great. She told me that she saw her leadership style as that of a cow catcher. And a cow catcher is the apparatus on the front of a steam train that
Okay.
when the steam train is plowing down the track, it would remove the debris, right? And that was her
Yeah.
job, was to move the debris out of the way so that the train could just keep moving. And that stuck with me. I always loved that.
I'm going to hold on to
And
that
then
one.
yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. And then what you mentioned about like being in the same boat or in the same industry as the big players and taking things from them but learning from them. We had a challenge at HeroX with NIH, National Institute for Child Health and Development, and it was called Connecting the Community for Maternal Health. And NIH
Mhm.
acknowledged that the majority of the grants that they give for maternal health research are always picked up by the same big organizations, same universities,
Mhm.
same consulting companies or research organizations. And they acknowledged also that there are tons of community organizations out there that want to learn how to do good maternal health research. So they ran a 3-phase, 2-year, $2 million challenge competition, only open to 501c3
Oh, wow.
community maternal health organizations. But
Yeah.
the challenge was structured after the NIH grant process, and it was meant to teach them how to do maternal health research the way that NIH teaches it. Yeah, the way they structure it. So they had a gathering phase where we rounded everybody, found all those organizations. We had a proposal phase, and then we had a research phase. And they got all kinds of support from the NIH. And these organizations actually went ahead and stood up their own research arm after completing the challenge because they had built that capacity to be able to do that. It was really powerful.
That's a great story. I think there's instructions and stuff, but you learn by doing, you learn by fire, which, it's not
Yeah.
always the funnest thing
Yeah.
to say, but that's just kind of
Yeah.
how it is. But also thinking to answer your question, also a little bit more tactically, but a little bit before it, we're focused on one of the big things we're trying to do is build a construction database, so that
Okay.
analyzing and forecasting estimates can be a lot more powerful. I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of the there's a lot of strength in being able to do that both for estimating projects, so then you can bid out more work and potentially get more work, but then you also have a little bit more insight on the construction of your projects, and where the costs typically explode, what is typically the cause of it, and you can potentially do some root cause analysis. So I think building
Yeah.
that database will help kind of if you think of the company as a person, that's kind of their own, that brain power, that so they have a little bit more long-term memory. Because I think if many businesses have a short-term memory in terms of they're not able to get the insights from the things that they're doing as a collective
Right.
unit, and then build it on. People do it individually, but let's say a person leaves, then that knowledge
Right.
is just amnesia in the business.
Yeah.
Forgot how to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about analytics when it's applied right is retrospective analyses. If they're
Mhm.
done right and if there's sufficient data, can become predictive analytics, right?
Yeah.
So if you run an analysis on those things that caused cost explosions in certain types of projects and you develop flags from that so that
Hmm.
when those flags get triggered in a future project, hey, we're looking at a potential cost explosion because of X, Y, and Z, which then turns into risk mitigation, which is just,
Exactly.
can be life-saving depending on for a small to medium-sized business.
Yeah.
And certainly can serve your customers down the line, right? To say, hey,
Yeah.
we have this ability to see these things. That's really
Yeah.
cool. It's really cool.
And
So
I
I'm
think like
curious.
you're
Go
talking about
ahead. Sorry.
predictive analytics. I was gonna just say ultimately, like, there are limitations to it. And I think if you think as predictive analytics as this crystal ball, you'll eventually get hit with a black swan. But if you see it as a way that like you said, that puts flags up, it
Yeah.
then can be used. I think there's always this relationship between analytics, AI, tech, and the actual person who needs to make decisions and use it. So
Indeed. Yeah. Augmented. It should be augmenting,
yeah.
not decision making. Not yet. So I'm curious for other innovators out there, for people who are doing something similar to you, they see some commonality here. What advice would you give them?
I would say two things. There's this book called Alchemy. I can't remember who. Let me see if I can. It's by this guy, Rory Sutherland. I've seen some of his TED Talks.
Okay.
He's an advertiser. His main thing is that, kind of coming from the advertising world, where the big synopsis is that logic can only go so far, and logic is really good at solving logical problems. But there's many, many, many examples of illogical things in this world that we live in, that need to be solved with another tool. Unsure if it's logic, unsure if it's emotion, unsure if it's something else. But I think there's a real ground for innovation where you can kind of approach something from a different angle. I think I can't remember what book or where I got the quote from is, but often taking a simple idea very seriously has a lot of power and merit to it. Because oftentimes when you think of innovation or think of AI or anything that's kind of in that wheelhouse, you're thinking of, let's say, some of the things that you're seeing on the news or seeing on X or seeing on whatever
Right.
platform you're seeing that you're using. And that, although innovative, it is groupthink innovative. So you're actually not getting something quite novel, following the sheep. But I think some of the most innovative people are everyone's doing this. I'm going to do that, do the opposite.
Yeah.
There is obviously an ability to fail. There is, like any adventure, there's risk and reward. But oftentimes, just even thinking about, hey, like, what would it look like if I did that? Although logically that's not supposed to make sense. Like, hey, let me just have people, get in a random person's car who they don't know their driving
Yeah.
skills and then get to where I need to go. So if you really break down a lot of things that we use, they're quite crazy. Like, yeah, I'm just going to leave, have someone come into my house, take care of it, and then pay me through an app, and all that type of stuff.
Right.
Ultimately,
Right.
obviously, more of these things are now businesses, but a lot of the innovative things were very like kind of wild west, a little rugged and dirty, and had a little bit of risk for all the people involved, and obviously some regulations and some bad cases came and then more rules. But I think the biggest thing is thinking, where is everyone else not going, and how do I kind of bring some of the things that people are going to this situation? So
Nice.
so
I like
yeah,
that a
so I
lot.
would say that's kind of
That's great advice. That's great advice. And I think it fits right in with the HeroX community and crowd. We got to run this one you would find interesting, I think. It was with National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and it was called Soundscapes. And it was meant to identify pairs of cities. So you had to identify a geographic location, but using non-speech ambient sound files. And so they didn't have to necessarily identify the location, but they had to pair up the cities. If there were pairs of cities that were geographically close to each other, they had to match them up. And lots of different approaches, lots of solutions came in. The winning solutions, what they did, they took a very different approach. They turned all of the sound files into image files, into sound wave image files, and then did pattern
mm,
recognition, object detection on the image files. And then that's how they determined the commonalities.
interesting. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. That's very, very cool. At first, I thought they were going to pick a sound, let's say, like, connected based on, let's
Yeah.
say, train stations or an animal sound, like, hey,
Sure.
this bird sound is indigenous and try to pick out that. But
Yeah.
that's cool.
So,
Hmm.
Buka, anything else you'd like to share? How can folks learn more about KEO, learn more about what you guys are doing, get involved?
Yeah. So we talked to get involved. We do a lot of public sector work, but if you want to find out more about what we're doing, just follow us at the KEO group.com. So that's our website. If you're doing work in the state of the US, in the Midwest particularly, like we're your people. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and stuff at Buka the Builder. I do some DJing, but I feel like everyone's a DJ now. But I've always really been into music. So Buka the Builder
Nice.
on most socials, and
Okay.
then the KEO group on most socials and,
Yeah.
and our website. So
Excellent. We'll put those relevant links in the description as well. So, Buka, thank you so
perfect.
much for your
Thank you.
time. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you being here. Some great insight and great perspective. And wish you all the best and all the luck in your vision, implementing your vision and seeing that through. It's really great.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
Super excited for having me. And hopefully that some of the insights will help the HeroX community.